Have you ever heard of a spirit so restless, so consumed by vengeance, that even death could not silence it? This is no ordinary ghost story. This is the tale of Amina, a wronged wife whose spirit will not rest until justice is served. Amina was once a vibrant woman, born and raised in a small but tight knit community. She carried the hopes of her family with her when she married Chike, the man she loved. For Amina, love was sacred. She poured her heart into her marriage, into her home. She gave everything. But Chike wasn't the man Amina believed him to be. While Amina remained devoted, Chike began to change. He became distant, cold, and secretive. At first, Amina tried to ignore it. She told herself that every marriage has its ups and downs. But soon, the whispers from the neighbors became louder. The looks from friends became more knowing. Chike was unfaithful. The day Amina discovered the truth, she felt a pain that tore through her soul. Chiki didn't deny it when confronted. In fact, he seemed almost relieved. He'd moved on, emotionally detached from Amina, and it was clear he had no intention of repairing the damage he had caused. His cruelty knew no bounds. In African tradition, marriage is a sacred bond, not just between two people, but between families, communities, and even the ancestors. To betray a wife is to upset the balance of the universe. Amina, however, was bound by her love, her duty, and her fear of societal judgment. She stayed despite the pain, hoping for a change that would never come. And then Chike did the unthinkable. He brought Ngozi, his mistress, into their home, the very space where Amina had once built dreams of a happy family. Amina's heart shattered. The humiliation was unbearable. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound. She could no longer stay. In her mind, there was only one escape from the endless torment: death. Amina took her own life, but even in death she found no peace. Her spirit, burning with the injustice she had suffered, rose from the grave. She could not rest. She would not rest. Not while Chike and Ngozi continued their lives as if nothing had happened. At first it was subtle. The faint sound of weeping in the middle of the night, the feeling of cold fingers brushing over their skin, the eerie sensation of being watched. But as the days passed, the hauntings grew stronger, more terrifying. Doors slammed shut with no warning. Objects moved on their own. Shadows crept in places where there shouldn't have been any. Ngozi would wake in the middle of the night, gasping for air, feeling Amina's presence looming over her. Chick, once so arrogant and sure of himself, began to unravel. He knew deep down that Amina's spirit had returned for justice. He tried to ignore the signs, dismissing them as figments of his imagination. But there was no escaping it. Amina was everywhere. He heard her voice in the wind, calling his name, accusing him, reminding him of his betrayal. And Ngozi, she wasn't spared either. She started to feel Amina's fury in every corner of the house. The weight of guilt bore down on her. No matter where she went, no matter what she did, Amina's ghost was always there, watching, waiting. Terrified, Ngozi confided in her friends, seeking help. But in the village, the elders whispered that no one could help her. A wronged wife's spirit would never rest until the injustice was corrected. The hauntings escalated. One night, Chike was jolted awake by a deafening crash. The mirror in their bedroom had shattered into 1,000 pieces, but in the reflection, Chike saw her, Amina, standing at the foot of their bed, her eyes filled with the fiery glow of vengeance. He screamed, but there was no escape. This was only the beginning. Chike and Ngozi tried to leave the house, hoping to escape the torment. But no matter where they went, Amina followed. It wasn't just the house that was haunted, it was them. They carried her with them, and her anger only grew. Amina's spirit was relentless. Everywhere they turned, she was there, her presence growing more powerful with each passing day. Villagers began to talk. Some claimed to have seen her walking the streets late at night, her silhouette moving through the darkness, her eyes burning with the intensity of her mission. Children would point and whisper, Amina is here. The elders, steeped in the ancient ways, knew what was happening. They had seen this before. A spirit wronged in life will not rest until balance is restored. But what could Chike and Ngozi do? How do you escape the judgment of the dead? One day, in desperation, Chiki sought out the village priestess, an old woman who had lived through many lifetimes and was said to have the power to communicate with the dead. She listened quietly as Chika poured out his story, his voice trembling with fear. The priestess said nothing for a long time. Then, in a voice as cold as the grave, she spoke. Amina seeks justice. Until she gets it, there will be no peace for you. Chike's heart sank. What must I do? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. The priestess looked at him with eyes that seemed to pierce through his soul. You know what you must do, she said. The hauntings grew more violent. Chike and Ngozi were no longer safe, not even in their sleep. Every night they were visited by Amina's spirit. Their health began to decline, both of them growing gaunt and pale from lack of rest. Their once perfect lives were now a living nightmare. But still, they refused to face the truth. They tried everything: prayers, rituals, offerings, but nothing could appease Amina's spirit. She wanted justice, and until she had it, she would not stop. The days blurred into nights, and Chike and Ngozi knew they were running out of time. The villagers whispered that soon Amina's spirit would claim what was rightfully hers. But what would that be? Their lives, their souls? No one knew for sure. But one thing was certain: Amina was not going to rest, and neither would Chike and Ngozi, not until the debt was paid in full. As the days passed, Chike and Ngozi found themselves in a state of desperation. They were no longer eating, barely sleeping, and paranoia gripped them like a vice. Every shadow, every creak of the floorboards sent them spiraling into panic. The villagers, once close friends, now avoided them, fearing that Amina's wrath might spread to them as well. The village priestess had given them an ultimatum: justice must be served. But what did that mean? Was there any way to make amends for what they had done? One night, as the couple sat in the dimly lit living room, shivering despite the heat, they heard a sound, a low, mournful wail that seemed to come from all directions. It was Amina. Her presence was stronger than ever, filling the room with a suffocating chill. The lights flickered, and then suddenly they went out. In the pitch black darkness, Amina's ghost appeared, more terrifying than ever before. Her form was no longer faint or fleeting. She was solid, her eyes glowing with rage. Chike and Ngozi were frozen with fear as she floated toward them, her expression one of unrelenting fury. You cannot escape me, she hissed. Your betrayal will not go unpunished. Chike dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Amina. I was wrong. I was blinded by selfishness and I destroyed everything. Please have mercy. But Amina's spirits remained unmoved. Her voice echoed through the room, cold and full of sorrow. There is no mercy for those who destroy love. You took everything from me. Now I will take everything from you. Suddenly, the room erupted into chaos. The walls shook violently, and the sound of shattering glass filled the air. Amina's ghost began to pull the very essence of life from Chike and Ngozi. They screamed in agony, their bodies convulsing as if they were being torn apart from the inside. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. The room fell silent. Chike and Ngozi lay motionless on the floor, their faces pale, their eyes wide open in a silent scream. Amina's spirit, satisfied at last, faded into the night. But her presence would not be forgotten. The villagers found the bodies the next day, but no one dared speak of what had happened. They knew the truth. Justice had been served, but at a terrible price. Chike and Ngozi's story became a warning passed down through generations, a reminder that betrayal, especially one as grave as Amina's, could never go unanswered. In time, the village returned to normal, but on quiet nights, some say they still hear the faint sound of weeping carried on the wind. And if you listen closely, you might even catch a glimpse of Amina's ghost wandering the streets, watching, waiting. And so the ghost of Amina found her justice, but her story remains etched into the hearts of all who hear it. Betrayal leaves scars that run deep, even beyond the grave. What would you do if faced with the choice between revenge and forgiveness? Could you let go, or would you seek justice no matter the cost? Thank you for joining me on this chilling journey through the world of African folklore. If you have any thoughts or theories about the story, share them in the comments below. Do you think Amina's spirit truly found peace? And what would you have done in Chiki's place? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any more of these haunting tales. Stay tuned for more African folklore stories where the lines between the living and the dead blur and justice is always waiting to be served. Until next time, stay safe and watch your back.